Well, we are at the time of college graduation, and so that means an influx of new people into the workforce full time. But with a labor market that's still holding its own, companies are concerned, obviously, around tariffs and consumer spending in the months ahead. What should graduates expect? Pleasure to be joined by Matthew Bidwell, professor of management here at the Wharton School. Hi, Matthew. Great to talk again.
Dan, nice to see you again.
So I guess we're at a point now with these graduations occurring. Many graduates may already have a job, so they're fairly set. For those that are still searching, what's the landscape look like?
I'm sorry to say it's not great. There are, I think, slightly weird things going on in the market for college graduates. And so you're right, when you look at the labor market overall, unemployment is not that far off historic lows. It's still the labor market overall, people have jobs, but unemployment for college graduates has been trending up for about 3 or 4 years now, and it's higher than it's been since about 2015. And so it's not catastrophic, but it's not what it has been, and it's not as positive a picture as I would like to paint.
What do you think is driving it?
All sorts of things. I think there's one thing that's fairly straightforward, one thing that's a bit weirder. The straightforward piece is, as you said, the labor market's kind of good, but there are a lot of headwinds. And so it's a little bit frozen. And so you're seeing this, what you're seeing is most people have jobs, which is great. There's not a lot of firing going on, also great, but there's not a lot of quitting and there's not a lot of hiring. And so I think given all the uncertainty that we're seeing, employers are doing what I think is exactly the right thing. I wish they did more regularly, which is to be slow about firing and slow about hiring. I think they're kind of seeing it's like, to fire people today and then try and rehire them in a few months' time is incredibly expensive. And let's not do that. So they're not letting go of people, but they're also saying because we don't want to have to do that, we're pretty nervous about taking on new people. And so the rates of hiring are much lower than they have been recently, which, again, if like you, like me, you're in a job, that's not a big concern. But if you're a college graduate and you looking for a job for the first time, you're one of the groups that's really going to be hit there.
So, what potentially leads to then shaking loose some of those people, maybe saying, look, it's time for me to move. I'm going to go to a new company. Because I think a lot of people feel like they need to have the security right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at why there's not so much quitting going on, I think it's largely related to there's not much hiring going on. So companies are being very cautious. People who are in jobs, that makes it harder for them to move. They're maybe not kind of exiting some of these entry-level positions and creating room for college graduates. And so the whole thing is slightly in status while everybody tries to figure out what's going to happen next.
How much then, if somebody is able to procure a couple of offers for a new job, in terms of understanding and really researching which is the best option for them, taking the time and thinking about that best option?
They absolutely should. I mean, there's a tricky dilemma here, which is, when you know the job market is not as good as it has been, certainly you want to search harder, but maybe you want to settle for something that maybe if you've been looking 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you wouldn't have settled for, because kind of that great job may not be out there anymore. On the other hand, kind of the job that you take does have implications for what you learn and where you go to next. And so one of the unfortunate things that we've seen from prior research is that people who graduate in recessions where it's really hard to get a job tend to see these kind of lasting penalty because you end up being hired into lower paying jobs and the experience you're getting is not so good and so on. So I think, is you need to balance being realistic with trying hard to get a good job. And I do think to the extent to which people find they end up in jobs that are a little bit disappointing for them, being prepared to move. So, like I say, the labor market is a little frozen at the moment. It could unfreeze, it could get worse. It will not stay frozen forever, certainly. And so I anticipate certainly 2-3 years, we expect things to be better. And so I think if people do end up in jobs that they find they can't get the right job for them, being prepared to try really hard to move subsequently and kind of doing what it takes to move up, I think it's important to get their career back on track.
Is the expectation then of getting a job offer and having it have some component of remote work, is that going away a little bit, or is that still in the mix a good bit?
It's still in the mix. If you read the news, there's no such thing as remote and hybrid work anymore. I speak to more and more people whose companies are dragging them back in. If you actually look at the survey data and other things, it hasn't changed that much over the last 2 years. There's a lot of hybrid work, there's a lot of remote work. And I suspect, frankly, for a lot of fresh college graduates, small companies, young companies, they don't want to pay for offices. I would also say it's a double-edged sword for college graduates. I mean, we've talked about this before. I'm a fan of remote and hybrid work. Just like let people work where they want to. But I think if you are a fresh college graduate, there's a lot to be said for being around other people. Partly it's fun. It's a time in your life you want to be around other people, but particularly it's easier to learn that way. And so I actually think if I was coming out of college, I would really be putting a premium on experiences where I could actually be in an office around other people and get a better chance to figure out what's going on.
Matthew, always great to talk. Thanks very much.
Good to speak with you.
Thank you. Matthew Bidwell, professor of management here at the Wharton School.